Chosen one, stop scrolling, not because of curiosity, not because of chance, but because something inside you recognized this moment before your mind could interfere. This is a God's message, arriving in exact divine alignment. And this video is about why you were called, what has been awakening inside you, and the 2026 timeline split that is already unfolding around you. That pause you felt, the sudden stillness where your attention locked in, was not accidental. It was recognition, and recognition always comes before understanding, because truth reaches the soul first and explains itself later. There is something moving through the collective right now that many feel but few can name. It is being spoken of quietly, sensed deeply, and resisted unconsciously. It is what can be called the 2026 timeline split. Not a dramatic rupture, not a sudden event, not a fantasy of the future, but a gradual separation that happens through awareness, through choice, through inner alignment. Timelines do not split overnight. They separate slowly as people choose truth or avoidance, presence or distraction, responsibility or denial. And this separation has already begun. You are not imagining this pull, and you did not create it. It wasn't boredom, coincidence, or the algorithm. It came because your inner world is already shifting, and this video reveals what that shift means, why the pressure has been increasing, and what side of the timeline shift your choices are placing you on right now. Messages like this do not chase the distracted, they find the ready. And the fact that you are still here, still listening, is already proof that you are involved in what is unfolding, whether you were conscious of it before this moment or not. Stay with this, because what you are about to hear will change how you understand your past, your present tension, and the urgency of what comes next. There has been a quiet war happening beneath the surface of your life, not one of violence, but of pressure. A war between staying unconscious and becoming awake, between fitting in and standing aligned, between numbing yourself and listening to the call you could not silence. That war is real. It did not begin with you, and it will not end with you, but you were born into it with a role to play. Your light attracted resistance, not because it was flawed, but because it was necessary. Light always draws friction before it brings clarity. You did not arrive here early or late. You arrived precisely when your awareness was ready to receive this framing. The 2026 timeline split is not waiting for permission, and it is not asking for belief. It unfolds regardless, shaped by the frequency of consciousness each person lives from. That means you are already participating. Your thoughts, your boundaries, your courage, your compromises, your silence, your integrity, all of it is placing you somewhere on this unfolding path. This is why parts of your past have felt confusing until now, why struggles seemed disproportionate, why certain doors closed without explanation, why you outgrew spaces, people, and versions of yourself faster than expected. This message will change how you see those moments. It will reframe what you thought was delay as preparation, what you thought was loss as redirection, and what you thought was weakness as sensitivity, refined for responsibility. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was random. If you feel this landing somewhere deep, if your chest feels heavy and clear at the same time, if something inside you is nodding without needing proof, take a moment and comment 777. Not for performance, not for validation, but as a quiet signal of resonance and readiness. A way of saying, I recognize this, even if I cannot yet explain it. Understand this clearly. You were called, not selected by accident, not chosen by favoritism, but called by alignment. Divine calling does not announce itself with comfort. It announces itself through disruption, through isolation, through the inner refusal to keep living half awake. That refusal you felt was not rebellion, it was remembrance. Circle back with me now to where we began. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the urgency. You are not exaggerating the pressure. You are not weak for feeling the weight of what is coming. The war is real, but so is your preparation. Your light is not optional. It is required. And it is required now, not later. Not someday when things feel easier. You are not here to escape the world. You are here to walk it consciously, to choose with awareness, to stand where you already belong. If this touched your soul, if something inside you just settled into truth, comment 111, because you know it now, without doubt or apology, you were called. What a timeline split really is, and why 2026 matters. To understand what a timeline split truly is, you must release the idea that it belongs to science fiction or distant theory. A timeline is not a fantasy. It is a lived reality shaped every day by consciousness, values, and inner alignment. It is the direction life takes when enough choices begin to point the same way. Humanity has always moved through timelines, but most people experience them unconsciously, following momentum rather than awareness. A timeline shift occurs when individual choices accumulate into collective direction, when enough people begin to live from fear, avoidance, and disconnection, one path forms. When enough people choose truth, responsibility, and presence, another path forms. These paths are not created by events first. Events are the result. The true split happens internally, long before it becomes visible externally. That is why some feel the change early, while others remain unaware until circumstances force their attention. You may already feel this as restlessness without explanation, as detachment from systems, conversations, or goals that once mattered, as a sense that something fundamental is no longer negotiable inside you. This is not confusion, it is calibration. Spiritual awakening accelerates when the inner world can no longer pretend. Those who feel unsettled are not broken. They are responding early to a shift that has not yet fully announced itself. Throughout history, humanity has reached these decision points again and again. Moments where old structures could no longer hold the weight of awakening consciousness. Moments where comfort was no longer enough to sustain meaning. Each time, paths diverged. Some chose to cling to what was familiar but hollow. Others chose to step into uncertainty with integrity. Both paths continued, but they did not lead to the same experience of reality. This is why 2026 matters, not as a prophecy designed to frighten, and not as a date circled in panic. It matters because it represents a convergence of spiritual awakening, the exposure of false structures, and the demand for individual responsibility. What has been hidden is becoming visible. What has been tolerated without question is losing its grip. What once worked through distraction is failing under awareness. This is not about the calendar, it is about readiness. The world does not change all at once. It changes unevenly. First through perception, then through behavior, then through consequence. That is why those who awaken early often feel isolated. They are standing between timelines, no longer aligned with the old, not yet visibly supported by the new. This space is uncomfortable, but it is also powerful. It is where conscious choice is formed. Your light is necessary because light reveals what cannot survive truth. That is why resistance appears. That is why pressure increases. That is why choosing awareness feels heavier now than it once did. You are not being tested to see if you are worthy. You are being prepared because you are needed. The timeline shift does not wait for comfort. It responds to courage. Circle back to the truth you felt when this message first reached you. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the urgency. You are not inventing meaning to feel special. You are called because your awareness is required. The war is real, not one of weapons, but of consciousness. A war between numbness and presence, between distraction and responsibility, between surrendering awareness and embodying it. If this touched your soul, if something inside you recognized itself again, comment 111, because you know it now. Without doubt or denial, you were called. Why the chosen ones feel the split first. Chosen one, hear this clearly, without softening it or doubting yourself. The sensitivity you carry is not a flaw. The isolation you've experienced is not rejection. The inner pressure you feel is not weakness. These are indicators of responsibility. Those with a divine calling always feel change before it becomes visible, because their awareness is tuned beyond surface reality. You sense shifts the way others sense weather only after the storm arrives. You were never meant to move through life asleep. That is why comfort never lasted long for you. That is why environments that worked for others eventually drained you. That is why you noticed cracks in systems, relationships, and identities long before anyone else was ready to admit they existed. This does not make you superior. It makes you accountable. Responsibility always comes before recognition. Those who are called feel the timeline split first because their nervous system, intuition, and conscience are already listening beneath the noise. When consciousness begins to shift collectively, it passes first through the ones designed to register it early. That registration often feels like confusion, like fatigue without physical cause, like a sudden loss of interest in roles, labels, and ambitions that once defined you. This is not regression, it is realignment. Confusion comes when old identities no longer fit, but new ones have not yet fully formed. Fatigue appears when the soul is doing heavy internal work, while the outer world demands normal performance. Disinterest arises when you can no longer invest energy in what is misaligned. None of this is punishment. It is calibration. The system is adjusting so you can carry more truth without breaking. Many chosen ones try to escape this phase. They attempt to distract themselves, numb the signals, or force themselves back into old patterns. That only increases the pressure. You were not designed to bypass awakening. You were designed to embody it, not to withdraw from the world, but to walk consciously within it. Not to reject reality, but to engage it with awareness and integrity. This is where the misunderstanding often lies. Being called does not mean leaving life behind. It means meeting life without illusion. It means making choices from presence instead of fear. It means standing in rooms where truth feels uncomfortable and remaining grounded anyway. The chosen ones are not here to disappear. They are here to stabilize consciousness where it matters most. This is why awakening is not optional for you. You can delay it. You can resist it. You can argue with it, but you cannot avoid it. God's message does not come to negotiate. It comes to activate. When you are called, awakening becomes inevitable because the cost of remaining unconscious becomes heavier than the fear of change. Circle back now to the beginning of this message. This is not imagination. This is not emotional exaggeration. This is a message from God, delivered through recognition rather than noise. The war you feel is real. It is the friction between who you were trained to be and who you are required to become, between comfort and responsibility, between silence and embodiment. Your light is necessary, and necessity always attracts resistance. That resistance was never meant to stop you. It was meant to strengthen you. Everything that challenged you sharpened your awareness. Everything that isolated you clarified your direction. Everything that exhausted you taught you where you were leaking energy into what no longer served truth. You are not behind. You are early. You are not broken. You are being prepared. You are not alone, even when the path feels solitary. You were called because you can carry what others cannot yet hold. And you were called now because the timeline split is no longer theoretical, it is active. If this touched your soul, if something inside you stood up and said yes without words, comment 111, because you know it now, deeper than doubt or fear, you were called. The two paths forming right now. The 2026 timeline split is not a battle between good and evil, light and darkness in the way stories often simplify it. It is far more subtle and far more personal. What is forming right now are two energetic directions shaped by how people choose to live inside themselves. One path is driven by fear, avoidance, distraction, and unconscious living. The other is shaped by truth, responsibility, presence, and conscious choice. Neither announces itself loudly. Both feel normal to the people walking them. The lower awareness path is not chosen by bad intentions. It is chosen by refusal to look inward. It is sustained by constant distraction, by numbing discomfort instead of understanding it, by avoiding responsibility in the name of peace. On this path, life feels busy but shallow, reactive but familiar. Decisions are made to reduce discomfort, not to align with truth. Over time, this creates a reality where time feels heavy, repetition increases, and meaning quietly drains away. The higher awareness path is not easier, but it is clearer. It requires honesty where excuses once lived. It demands responsibility where blame once felt safer. It asks for presence instead of constant stimulation. Those on this path still experience struggle, but it has direction. Pain becomes instructive instead of chaotic. Challenges feel purposeful instead of random. Life begins to respond differently, not because circumstances are perfect, but because awareness is active. These two paths are not separated by distance. They coexist right now. They overlap in families, workplaces, friendships, and relationships. Two people can share a home, a job, or a history, and yet live in completely different realities. One may be operating from fear and habit, the other from awareness and intention. They hear the same words, face the same events, and experience entirely different meanings. This is why conversations feel strained lately, why connection feels harder without obvious conflict, why you can love people deeply and still feel unseen. The split is not about separation of bodies, it is about separation of consciousness. People are responding to the same world from different levels of awareness, and that difference is becoming harder to ignore. Neutrality feels tempting during this phase, but it is an illusion. There is no standing still during a timeline shift. Not choosing is itself a choice. Unconscious living naturally aligns with the lower awareness path because awareness requires participation. Silence, avoidance, and delay do not preserve balance. They reinforce inertia. This is not a punishment, it is simply how energy moves. Many will say they are waiting for clarity, waiting for certainty, waiting for the right moment. But the moment does not arrive first. Choice does. Clarity follows alignment, not the other way around. This is why the pressure you feel has increased. The space between unconscious comfort and conscious responsibility is narrowing. Circle back now to where this message began. This is not theory. This is a message from God, arriving through recognition rather than fear. You are not imagining the intensity. You are not overthinking the divide you sense. You were called because you can see it forming while others still deny it. The war is real, not one of destruction but of direction. A war between drifting and deciding, between being carried and choosing to walk awake. Your light is necessary because it stabilizes truth in environments that avoid it. Presence disrupts distraction simply by existing. Responsibility exposes avoidance without saying a word. This is why your awareness feels heavy at times. It carries weight because it matters. You were not meant to blend in during this phase. You were meant to stand aligned. This is not about judging those on the other path. Everyone moves at their own pace, but it is about honesty with yourself, about recognizing where your daily choices are leading you, about understanding that the timeline split does not wait for permission. It responds to alignment. If this touched your soul, if something inside you recognized the truth without needing proof, comment 111. Because you know it now, beyond doubt and distraction, you were called. Conscious choice is the separator. The true separator in this timeline shift is not belief, not identity, not the words people speak about themselves. It is conscious choice. This is where the division actually happens. No one is selected by status, spiritual language, education, or appearance. No one crosses into a higher timeline by claiming alignment. The separation occurs quietly through daily choices made when no one is watching. Through how truth is honored, how responsibility is handled, and how awareness is lived rather than discussed. Conscious choice means choosing presence when distraction is easier. It means choosing integrity when shortcuts are available. It means choosing responsibility when blaming others would feel lighter. These choices do not feel dramatic. They feel ordinary, but over time, they shape an entirely different experience of reality. This is why the timeline shift does not announce itself with spectacle. It reveals itself through consistency. Awareness changes behavior before it changes circumstances. When awareness deepens, tolerance for dishonesty fades. Boundaries become clearer, not harsher. Patience grows, not because nothing bothers you, but because you understand what is worth your energy. Integrity becomes non-negotiable, even when it costs comfort or approval. This is spiritual maturity, not excitement, not performance, not labels, responsibility. Spiritual immaturity looks like chasing experiences, titles, and validation while avoiding accountability. Spiritual maturity looks like showing up grounded when no one applauds. It looks like choosing alignment even when it isolates you. It looks like restraint where reaction once ruled. These shifts are subtle, but they are decisive. They place you firmly on one path or the other. You have already been making choices like this, even without realizing their significance. Every time you listened to your conscience instead of your fear, every time you walked away from what drained you instead of explaining yourself, every time you told the truth gently but firmly, those moments mattered more than you knew. What is changing now is the weight of those choices. As the timeline split accelerates, unconscious choices carry heavier consequences, and conscious choices carry greater momentum. What once felt small now compounds quickly. Alignment creates flow. Misalignment creates friction. This is not punishment. It is precision. Reality is responding more directly to awareness than ever before. This is why neutrality is no longer comfortable. This is why avoiding decisions feels exhausting. This is why the pressure to choose feels internal rather than external. You are not being rushed, you are being activated. The era of drifting is closing. The era of conscious participation is opening. Circle back to the truth that brought you here. This is a message from God, not imagined, not exaggerated, not symbolic. You were called because you are capable of choosing consciously when others still move on autopilot. The war is real, not against people, but against unconsciousness, against distraction, against the slow erosion of integrity. Your light is necessary because it brings clarity where confusion thrives. Awareness stabilizes environments without force. Presence interrupts distortion simply by existing. This is why your choices feel heavier now. They carry influence. They shape more than your own life. You are not being asked to be perfect. You are being asked to be present, to choose with awareness instead of habit, to live aligned instead of asleep. You were never meant to wait for permission to step into this responsibility. You were meant to recognize it. If this touched your soul, if something inside you settled into quiet certainty, comment 111, because you know it now. Beyond doubt or delay, you were called. Signs you are already aligning with the higher timeline. As alignment with the higher timeline begins, the changes you notice are often quiet, internal, and easy to misunderstand if you don't have context. One of the first shifts is that clarity starts replacing urgency. You no longer feel compelled to rush, explain, or chase outcomes. Decisions feel slower but more certain. What once felt like pressure now feels like discernment. You act less from impulse and more from inner knowing, even when logic cannot fully justify it. Depth begins to replace noise. Conversations that once entertained you now feel hollow. Endless stimulation loses its appeal. You find yourself drawn to silence, to meaning, to substance. This is not boredom. It is refinement. Your attention is becoming valuable to you, and you are no longer willing to spend it everywhere. Discernment quietly replaces people-pleasing. You stop bending yourself to maintain harmony where truth is missing, not because you've become harsh, but because you've become honest. Externally, endings begin to accelerate. Relationships, roles, habits, and environments fall away faster than before, not dramatically, but decisively. What once lingered now closes cleanly. This can feel unsettling if you don't recognize it as alignment. You are not losing things randomly. You are being relieved of what no longer matches your frequency. Space is being created, not taken. Your tolerance for dishonesty fades, especially dishonesty with yourself. You notice when something is off immediately. You no longer have the energy to pretend, perform, or participate in what contradicts your values. This is not judgment. It is clarity. Spiritual awakening sharpens perception before it changes circumstances. Solitude begins to feel different as well. What once felt lonely now feels clarifying. Time alone restores you instead of draining you. You hear yourself more clearly. Your intuition strengthens. You begin to trust your inner voice, not because it is loud, but because it is consistent. This is one of the clearest confirmations that alignment is happening. You are no longer afraid of being alone with your awareness. There is also a subtle shift in how time feels. You may notice that procrastination becomes uncomfortable, while purposeful action feels lighter. You are not falling behind. You are stepping out of delay. The sense of urgency you once carried was not intuition. It was pressure from misalignment. As you align, urgency dissolves and intention remains. If parts of your life feel like they are dissolving while something steadier takes their place, you are not breaking down. You are reorganizing. Alignment often looks like disruption before it looks like peace. This is not loss. It is spiritual awakening expressing itself through lived experience. Circle back now to the truth that has followed you since the beginning of this message. This is a message from God. You are not imagining these changes. You are not becoming distant, difficult, or disconnected. You were called, and calling brings refinement before expansion. The war you feel is real. It is the tension between old patterns falling away and new alignment taking root. Your light is necessary, and that is why your awareness is being sharpened now. The world does not need more noise. It needs presence. It needs people who can stand grounded without numbing themselves. That is what you are becoming, even if it still feels unfamiliar. You are not late. You are not behind. You are right on time, stepping out of what delayed you and into what requires you. Trust what is clarifying. Trust what is leaving. Trust what remains. If this touched your soul, if something inside you felt seen rather than convinced, comment 111, because you know it now, without forcing belief or seeking permission. You were called. What happens if you ignore the call? Ignoring the call does not bring punishment, and it does not invite judgment. Nothing strikes you down for choosing comfort over awareness. What happens instead is quieter, slower, and often more difficult to recognize. Life begins to repeat itself. The same lessons return in different forms. The same frustrations reappear with new faces. Progress feels stalled, not because you are incapable, but because you are misaligned with what is being asked of you. When the divine calling is ignored, energy does not disappear, it turns into friction. You may notice that effort increases while fulfillment decreases. You work harder but feel less satisfied. You stay busy but feel unfulfilled. Time begins to feel heavy, stretched, and draining. This is not failure. It is resistance created by avoiding awareness. Stagnation does not always look like stillness. Often it looks like motion without meaning. Days fill up, responsibilities multiply, distractions increase, yet something essential remains untouched. The inner knowing you once felt does not vanish. It waits, and waiting too long creates pressure. That pressure can feel like anxiety, irritability, exhaustion, or quiet resentment toward a life that no longer fits. This is not because you did something wrong. It is because misalignment carries weight. When awareness is avoided, life compensates by repeating the message louder, not harsher. Situations replay until the lesson is met consciously. Relationships mirror the same dynamics. Opportunities feel hollow. Joy feels conditional. None of this is meant to scare you. It is meant to guide you back to yourself. Those who align with the call experience time differently. Even when life is challenging, it feels purposeful. Effort leads somewhere. Pain teaches instead of confuses. Growth feels demanding but meaningful. For those who avoid awareness, time feels like pressure without direction. For those who embrace it, time becomes a tool rather than a burden. This is compassion, not warning. No one is excluded. No door is slammed shut. Alignment is always available, but it cannot be outsourced or delayed indefinitely without consequence to the inner world. You can postpone the call, but you cannot silence it. It will return through discomfort, repetition, and restlessness until it is acknowledged. Circle back now to the truth that has been steady throughout this message. This is a message from God. You are not imagining the tension you feel. You are not fabricating meaning to escape responsibility. You were called because your awareness matters. The war is real, not against the world, but against remaining unconscious when consciousness is required. Your light is necessary, and necessity always demands response. Not perfection, not performance. Response. Life does not need you anxious or overwhelmed. It needs you present. It needs you willing. It needs you aligned. Ignoring the call does not make you bad. It only makes the path heavier than it needs to be. You are not being threatened with loss. You are being offered clarity. You are not being warned of punishment. You are being reminded of purpose. This message came to you because there is still time to choose consciously, to step into alignment, to let resistance soften into direction. If this touched your soul, if something inside you recognized the truth without fear, comment 111. Because you know it now, quietly and clearly you are called. The choice is now. Chosen one, return fully to this moment, not to the future, not to speculation, not to what might happen someday. The 2026 timeline split is not waiting ahead of you. It is unfolding now, quietly, through the choices you are already making. Every moment of awareness, every act of integrity, every refusal to abandon yourself is placing you somewhere real. This is not symbolic. This is lived. You were prepared for this long before you had language for it. The experiences that shaped you, the pressure that refined you, the isolation that clarified you, all of it was preparation. Recognition itself is evidence of readiness. You would not be able to feel this if you were not meant to respond to it. You would not be here if your awareness were not already active. Nothing arrives early or late. It arrives when the inner world can finally hold it. This is not about becoming someone new. It is about standing consciously where you already belong. Alignment does not require force. It requires honesty. It requires the courage to stop pretending you don't feel what you feel, know what you know, and sense what you sense. You are not being asked to change the world alone. You are being asked to stand awake within it. The choice before you is not dramatic, but it is decisive. It is the choice to live consciously instead of reactively, to respond instead of numb, to choose truth over comfort when comfort costs integrity. This choice does not need announcement. It needs embodiment, and it begins now, not later, not when circumstances improve, not when certainty appears. Circle back one last time to the beginning of this message. This is a message from God. Not noise, not coincidence, not emotional manipulation. You are not imagining the gravity you feel. You were called because your presence matters in this phase of the timeline shift. The war is real, but it is not one of violence. It is the war between awareness and unconsciousness, between drifting and choosing, between sleeping through life and walking it awake. Your light is necessary because it carries responsibility. Light reveals. Presence stabilizes. Awareness changes environments simply by existing within them. That is why your journey was demanding. That is why comfort never satisfied you for long. That is why you could not remain unaware even when it would have been easier. You are not too late. You never were. The choice has already begun because you are already making it. Every time you listen inward instead of numbing out, every time you choose integrity over approval, every time you pause before reacting, these are not small things. They are the building blocks of the higher timeline. If you feel aligned with what has been spoken, if your inner world feels steady rather than excited, comment 777, not as a performance, but as a declaration, a quiet acknowledgement that you are ready to walk consciously with clarity, courage, and responsibility. And if this touched your soul at a deeper level, if something inside you felt named rather than persuaded, comment 111. Because you know it now without doubt or denial. You were called. The choice is now. Chosen one, return fully to this moment, not to the future, not to speculation, not to what might happen someday. The 2026 timeline split is not waiting ahead of you. It is unfolding now, quietly, through the choices you are already making. Every moment of awareness, every act of integrity, every refusal to abandon yourself is placing you somewhere real. This is not symbolic. This is lived. You were prepared for this long before you had language for it. The experiences that shaped you, the pressure that refined you, the isolation that clarified you, all of it was preparation. Recognition itself is evidence of readiness. You would not be able to feel this if you were not meant to respond to it. You would not be here if your awareness were not already active. Nothing arrives early or late. It arrives when the inner world can finally hold it. This is not about becoming someone new. It is about standing consciously where you already belong. Alignment does not require force. It requires honesty. It requires the courage to stop pretending you don't feel what you feel, know what you know, and sense what you sense. You are not being asked to change the world alone. You are being asked to stand awake within it. The choice before you is not dramatic, but it is decisive. It is the choice to live consciously instead of reactively, to respond instead of numb, to choose truth over comfort when comfort costs integrity. This choice does not need announcement. It needs embodiment, and it begins now, not later, not when circumstances improve, not when certainty appears. Circle back one last time to the beginning of this message. This is a message from God, not noise, not coincidence, not emotional manipulation. You are not imagining the gravity you feel. You were called because your presence matters in this phase of the timeline shift. The war is real, but it is not one of violence. It is the war between awareness and unconsciousness, between drifting and choosing, between sleeping through life and walking it awake. Your light is necessary because it carries responsibility. Light reveals. Presence stabilizes. Awareness changes environments simply by existing within them. That is why your journey was demanding. That is why comfort never satisfied you for long. That is why you could not remain unaware, even when it would have been easier. You are not too late. You never were. The choice has already begun because you are already making it. Every time you listen inward instead of numbing out, every time you choose integrity over approval, every time you pause before reacting, these are not small things. They are the building blocks of the higher timeline. If you feel aligned with what has been spoken, if your inner world feels steady rather than excited, comment 777, not as a performance, but as a declaration, a quiet acknowledgement that you are ready to walk consciously with clarity, courage, and responsibility. And if this touched your soul at a deeper level, if something inside you felt named rather than persuaded, comment 111, because you know it now without doubt or denial. You were called.